Hey there, welcome to episode 86 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this on Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. The time is 11:43 a.m. Today's topic, title, New York 95-96. Why that time period? Well, as a matter of fact, it's when I went to visit New York City with a college roommate of mine a couple years after we graduated. It's that simple. If you're not familiar with quaggling sand, it is a technical term. It refers to something you probably refer to as pins and needles. It's that sensation of circulation returning to, for example, a hand or a foot. Perhaps you've been sitting on or laying on or otherwise restricting blood flow. When it returns, you've probably called it pins and needles. Quaggling sand. As an audio program, it is an audio essay of sorts, stories, tales, recollections. You may find them interesting or not. I can't say. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the show notes within the episode description. Within, you will find a summary, which I'll read to you, and the 4 shameless self-promotion links you've heard in every other episode. I could have links, I suppose, to New York, but, if you know, you know. You should go to New York if you're curious. Who wants articles and pictures and whatnot? Just go and check it out. On that note, the summary of today's episode. Start spreading the news. A long time ago, I took my first trip back east after graduating college with a college roommate to see the city as it was back then, and one last visit to the World Trade Center. The links for today's episode, as usual. 2 links to buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. Spelled out DANHUGO, no space. BuyMeACoffee.com is a platform I use to engage my audience. I've had a profile page there for many years. You're under no obligation to spend any money here, but you should. No, you can if you want. Proceeds go to purchase coffee beans and coffee accessories. If you scroll down on the profile page, you will see affiliate links to some of my favorite coffee beans, which I order through Amazon, which you can too. You can get coffee from other places, but it's convenient. There are a few. I like the Shock coffee, actually. It seems like one of those things that, what could that be? But it's actually pretty good. Go figure. And it replaces the Black Diamond coffee I used to get, which was also very good, but no longer available. Such is life. If you are curious, you can listen to the Buy Me an Update audio program on Mondays, available exclusively at buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. That's the second link. 5 minutes or less. A quick rundown on the previous week's audio programs and the news and announcements upcoming. The next 2 links, kofi.com/danhugo. Then you can slap a /posts at the end if you want to get to the coffee solo program. I don't really use some of the other features of Ko-fi.com, but I do publish a random, that is, it doesn't appear at the same time. It's not really random. Sporadically published audio program, Coffee Solo. It has no time constraints, no topic limitations, and no schedule to follow. You can check that out exclusively at kofi.com/danhugo/posts. And remember, it's Ko-fi, ko-fi.com. The hyphen is next to the 0 on most keyboards. And now on with the show. In the beginning, I was born in New Jersey, which I may have mentioned a few times. If not, I was. And during the nearly 6 years I lived there before we moved to Arizona, I would say we ventured over the bridge to New York at least once or twice. The Natural History Museum, Central Park, and various foods were big on the agenda. New York bagels and Italian ice. Yes, please. During a summer, I was 16 years old. I ventured back with an uncle, unfortunately since passed, to spend time in Hackensack, New Jersey, with a brief visits across over to the city of New York. Not as much. We were mostly in New Jersey. We had to go to New York to get the usual cargo to bring back: crumb cakes from B&W Bakery, devil dogs, and various other sundries. I remember there were cashews and pistachios involved. I recall we extended our trip a bit, a couple days. Perhaps we could get the full brunt of the summer humidity rolling in. I think it was something having to do with staying for July 4th, maybe. We also managed to stop by the old neighborhoods in New Milford. That was fun. I would visit New York again many times since, including more time spent in Queens, But these were mostly work-oriented trips. My trip at the end of 1995, including New York. Boy, if I could read, including New Year, 1996. So we stayed from 95 into 96, was pure vacation, which is something I rarely included in my early career. So getting out, checking out the sights, it was a good idea. So heading back east, I was working in the Newton group at the Apple Computer at the time. One of my college roommates, we can call him TM, since I didn't ask him if I could talk about him, and I had talked about going to New York one day. The time appeared to be at hand, so we planned the trip. He was living in LA. I was in the Bay Area. We would be headed there in the winter, staying for New Year's, and then headed back. We did not anticipate the government shutdown that would take place between December 16th, 1995 and January 6th, 1996, but who did really? Luckily, this did not impact air travel, though it did prevent one stop we had planned there in the city, or rather near it. For me, travel was not something I did so frequently, getting ready to head out for a winter visit when I had been living and working in California for 7 years at that point, and Arizona before that. And while I did not while I did a reasonable job of getting the winter clothes and gloves and whatnot together, I could have been better. I survived, good for me, but I would become more adept at traveling and packing after a few more scant trips abroad. And then eventually, when I was working for Intel, a lot of traveling. So I became pretty good at it. But here, I survived. Flying in, TM arrived before I did. I knew the address near the Empire State Building where we would be staying with a friend of his. I do not recall the cross streets today, but it was quite near, very near. And for some reason, I chose to fly into JFK. Obviously, if I had it to do over again, I would have aimed for LaGuardia or even better, Newark. And by better, I just mean proximity. Though I have to say, Newark was doing pretty okay as my main gateway to and from Europe when I was working for Intel. So I think today Newark is kind of on a downward slide, but a few years ago it was okay. I didn't dislike the Newark airport. It's not amazing, but it was fine. JFK was the wrong choice, but that's how we learn. By the time I arrived, TM and the person we were staying with, a friend of his from high school, were out getting some dinner. So I hung out at a pizza slice shop about a block away from his friend's place. This was before everybody had a cell phone, of course, so we were relying on prearranged times and places. Remember those days? They had no idea how long it was going to take me to get there, so fine, it all worked out eventually. Once we did meet up, it was 5 floors of walk up to get to the apartment, which was a reasonable size for one person, his friend, who lived there. And not awful for the 3 of us, in my opinion, initially. There was a little alcove between the entry and the kitchen where our host set up a little futon. And to be clear, the futon is the mattress part. Some people may confuse the frame. Futon frame. So it was just the futon on the floor, which TM and I shared for the duration of our stay. Luckily, we knew each other. Little typo. Okay. So each morning... And I honestly don't remember what the cross streets were. It was like, for some reason, 33rd and 3rd sticks in my mind, but I don't know if that's where we were staying or something else. It may not even be in New York. It was somewhere near. So each morning, and I think it was a rent-controlled apartment. Either way, it was a great spot for anyone wanting to explore the city. It was a great opportunity we had thanks to this friend of his. Every day we would walk out of the building, down the stoop. Actually, we would stop and look, like, okay, today we're going to go that way, or today we're going to the Empire State Building. You could see the Empire State Building pretty clearly, but then that's the nature of tall buildings that are noteworthy. It was most definitely on our agenda, of course, and we had a lot to do, though. A lot of things were on our agenda. Team had never been to New York, so we were usually up and at 'em early. I don't recall being overly focused on breakfast, more lunch and dinner, wherever we found ourselves in the itinerary. So if we were near a particular place, great. Occasionally we would have a dinner destination, like we want to go check out this place or that, which was not formalized, our agenda, but we had a lot of items on it. We mostly focused on dinner, not really lunch so much, although, now and then it depends. But not really on the best of spots. Like we weren't going for fine dining or particular ethnic selections or whatnot. Though we did run into some of TM's friends in one large restaurant. The name escapes me, but I have a glass from the place somewhere. What do you call the restaurants like Hard Rock and Planet Hollywood and all that? It's one of those, but it was sports related. Sports something. I can't remember. We probably went to Hard Rock, speaking of, some ethnic spots now and then, but not overly focused. More, hey, we want to try this place. I think I would do it differently if I knew then what I know now. But New York is still there for now. I should go back one of these days. Definitely would check out more of the food truck scene, of course. Although I had opportunities to do these things a little bit during work trips back to the New York area. So I would go again. You should too. Navigation. Remember when we did not all have cell phones? That'll be a running theme here. So we were carrying actual film cameras and paper maps. I know, crazy. I had not really self-navigated in the city. I mean, we were there when I was 5. And for all practical purposes, I was as new to the real city as TM was. So navigation was a minor challenge. I say minor because I had my vague memories of this or that would come back to me. I didn't really have any spatial relations, but I would remember hey, we should go check. Oh, I remember this place, that kind of thing. We would find our stop. We'd usually take the subway. We would come up on the street level, and then TM would just pause, and then his internal compass would settle, and then he would turn and say that way. And he was right. It was interesting and odd to see and to watch, but it was useful. He knew exactly where we were and where to go. Over the course of our stay over the course of our stay there, it became easier to get around inside the walk-up radius. So within a mile or two, we knew more streets. Production bias streets, speaking of. We knew more, we just knew more of, getting started wherever we were headed. So we had more orientation information a couple days in. We did venture to different parts of the city, surely a tiny fraction, given we were only there for a couple of days, really, a few days. Not decades, which it probably would take to really understand the whole place. But we did pretty well, I have to say. I think the only time we had any difficulty was headed to Hackensack for a few hours. We only went there, we were in and out, where there was far less snowplow and street traffic to clear any of the snow. So snow was piled up everywhere. It was more difficult to walk around. Clearly no subways, not as easy to get any sort of transit. So we were on foot. We managed, but I wanted to go there to go to the bakery, of course, and then head back. Nightlife. Given that we were in our mid-20s, we tended to visit dinner spots with some sort of alcohol component. And in fact, one of our side quests was finding local brew pubs to try. Our host was far more into the nightlife than the tourism notion, and some of her friends were even more into the nightlife. So I think probably twice we hung out with them, maybe 3 times, but I think it was twice. We did not hang out with our host so much, as I just suggested. A couple of times, I think there was a party of some sort and maybe a visit to one of her friends where they lived, several subway stops away. People in our age group were definitely in the area. Were definitely into getting out for dinner and hanging out and drinking and all good things. But clubbing and cocktailing was not on the agenda. So it was more brew pubs and dinner wherever we were at the time than passing the time with the club or cocktail scene. So in other words, we didn't really go to New York to party. We went there to be tourists, which we were. Of course, we were spending our days doing the tourist duty, a lot of walking. A lot of moving around in cold weather, which was not our daily experience otherwise. Again, TM was in LA. I'm up in the Bay Area. It is the coldest summer you might spend. However, we were there in the snow in New York, so it was an unusual circumstance. They were long days. They were fun days, but they were long days. So we weren't getting out of work and heading to the club. It was more like, oh, we've already seen a ton of stuff today. We can hang out with people, but we did not shy away from hanging out after dark, but our days were profoundly long. So I will suggest that either we missed out or we did better by missing out. One of those. Maybe both. Maybe both. I don't know if my voice gave out there. My voice is doing it. It's going to rain today in Vegas, so the weather is working against me. Getting around New York. As I mentioned, we left the Stoop each morning on foot and would sometimes wander to our destination. Often we were finding a subway and our route to wherever we were headed. This was in the Mayor Giuliani era, which was, for better or worse, left the subway stations pretty clean and nearly empty sometimes. When I was 5 and we would take a rare subway trip in the city somewhere within, or maybe, I don't think we took two, maybe, did we take the train too? I don't know. Somebody out there will remind me. We were not to look at anyone nor touch anything and forget the appearance of having anything of value on our persons. I had no real sense that, noisy day today. I had no real sense that that was still quite as tense in the subways and in the stations. In my other visits to New York afterward, somewhat similar. I don't know how it is today. I haven't been back to New York for, probably 7 years. Later at night, we would sometimes catch a cab. Remember, this was long before Uber and Lyft and whatnot came along. So if we were not near a subway station, and if it was late and thus cold, maybe grab a taxi. And I have to say, one of the best of them was a particular driver wearing a red hat of some sort. It may have been a beret. I can't remember. I know it was unusual and noteworthy. Doing his best Rodney Dangerfield material for the entire ride from very start to very finish. Catching a cab on the street definitely changes the dynamic of car-free movement around any city. Here in Vegas, there are a lot of rules limiting access to taxis outside of taxi stands. So if you can't just get a taxi at the side on the street. Got to go to a taxi stand at the resorts, and in many cases, rideshare cars, for example, are to be met at the back of the building, out of sight. This changes the way people move around in any place, certainly in New York. So the ability to get around, there is tremendous traffic, and the sidewalks during the day certainly are packed with people. Crossing the street is a stunt, best done by those well trained. I was almost hit by a car once or twice crossing a street in New York. I was in the crosswalk. Yeah, that's the problem. I don't recall catching a city bus while we were there this time. We may have once, but I don't think so. I know I have in other visits to New York, although not as frequently as I probably could. I'm going to guess the bus traveling through New York City is an adventure. We did take a Port Authority bus to New Jersey. These commuter buses are pretty comfortable. And I think if I were headed back east again around now for any length of time, I would catch some of these buses and get out more, see more of the place where I didn't see when I was growing up. I was 5. What are you going to do? The subway was pretty clean, though. It worked getting around most of the time. And, the subway is a staple of New York. It's worth using. So the sights. I mentioned we had an agenda. We had worked out our itinerary each day to try to catch proximal items, so kind of whittling down the list. And this worked out pretty well. Tourist maps were surprisingly useful. It is, after all, how people explored their tourism possibilities before everything was online. I wonder if access to so much information has removed the mystery, the sense of discovery. It is in fact made discovery old hat at this point. New hat is online. You don't even have to discover anything more. You'll get a list of 50 YouTube videos from today about things going on in New York or Vegas or wherever. We spent a whole day on museums, which is probably nowhere near enough for true aficionados. The MoMA was interesting. That's the Museum of Modern Art. I can't say it was for me. I'm not truly a MoMA. I'm not in the MoMA demographic. While the Natural History Museum was a return to one of my favorite spots, including the old T-Rex and the blue whale hanging from the ceiling and much more. Like I said, we spent a good chunk of a day at these two places. I did enjoy getting back to the Natural History Museum. You should definitely stop by there if you can. We did make a point of visiting waypoints like Tribeca and Soho. We found spots to grab a bite. We did not do a Central Park visit or that seems like a full day that could be spent there. We did wander to buy 30 Rock to see the tree and the ice skating. We visited the electronics shops. We checked out at least one mall. We may have stopped at Macy's even. Generally taking the boxes. Unfortunately, we had to leave one off the list. And I will say here, in writing this episode and in jotting down my outline and various notes and so on, I completely left out the fact that we were at Times Square for New Year's. Why did I leave it out? Because it was not that eventful. To be honest, it's at the time, it had just become one of those things people do. It was still crowded. It was packed. And I think they were being a little bit careful because it was after the first World Trade Center bombing, the basement bomb that they tried. So I think there was a little extra bit of scrutiny. I don't think you were allowed to just come and go. Like once you're in Times Square, you stay, and once you leave, you're done. So, but it wasn't particularly eventful. So I wouldn't call spending New Year's in Times Square at that time noteworthy. So it didn't really pop into my mind to say it, but there it is. I think New Year's is better spent in more interesting places, to be honest. So because it's kind of a trope. It's a meme. Oh, New Year's in Times Square. Okay, check the box. So what about Statue of Liberty and World Trade Center? Well, one day we headed to Battery Park to see if maybe there was a chance that we could get out to the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island maybe. But Newt Gingrich foiled our plans with the government shutdown. It was still in effect. We could only hang out at the park, Battery Park, for a while, look out at the statue and consider our next destination. But we were close. It was right there. Indeed, we were also close to the World Trade Center. We decided to walk to the World Trade Center and check out the views from there. Not a short walk, but not too bad. But it was a nice day, so we did it. Got to the towers, paid for tickets to get the whole deal, I guess. The window on the World restaurant was basically the end of our evening. From the time we got there, we spent the rest of the day into the, I'm going to say like 8 or 9 p.m. So it was a good 8 hours at least, hanging out there, at least. Giving us a sizable chunk of a day, not only near the top, but at the top of the World Trade Center Tower, the South Tower. I dive into that a bit more, or to dive into that a bit more. It took a while to get all the way up to the through the tourist gaggle. I think there was somebody speaking, like a little history review of the towers and whatnot. So we didn't just get in an elevator and go right up. There was some sort of a stairway or some escalator or something to go up first, and we got some sort of tourist introduction or something. And that's fine. But we reached the restaurant and spent time looking at, well, the world. But at some point we were able to get out onto the roof. We could clearly see the North Tower and the radio mast and, of course, everything else. This was into early evening, so the sun was going to be setting. It was cold, but it was nice. And then we were in the restaurant. We grabbed a bite, then hung out. And we said, well, we're here. We might as well wait until it's dark and see if what the night view looks like. So yes, we could look out through the windows, and that was fine. But the fun part was the roof at night. When the wind chill was getting down to minus 50 Fahrenheit or so, we were led onto the roof for a few minutes at a time. They weren't necessarily saying, get back in here, but they weren't, in general, they weren't letting like 50 people onto the roof. So you'd go out in a group of like 5 or 6 or something, take pictures, do your thing, go back in. Because it was cold. But also, who needs a crowd of people on the roof of the World Trade Center, right? Who knows what could go wrong? So I think probably 3 or 4 times we kind of, you get back into a little line. Given the temperature, it wasn't like there was 100 people waiting, but it was a group. So we'd go out for a couple minutes, come back in, get back in line, do a thing. And the guy that was controlling all this was, there was no drama. It was like, yeah, sure. Just, we want to let everybody up here, but it's also extremely cold. So be careful. So it was fun. It was fine. It was all good. So we went onto the roof for a few minutes, and it became too cold to do anything. So you basically had to go back inside. So in the little sort of hallway that would lead out onto the roof, it was just too cold. It was too cold for any practical anything. Even working a camera, and again, remember this was a film camera back in the day. Working a camera was a challenge. My hands would get numb. I would take my glove off so I could work the buttons, and it was like, oh, geez, this is cold. With the wind, the wind was making it horrible. And then there was nowhere near enough light to get a really great picture of the sights. This was not a camera for taking nice photos like that, so the pictures that did come out were mediocre. And I was shivering and going numb, so the whole thing was just very difficult. However, the memories alone are interesting, and of course, I can always say that I was on the roof of the World Trade Center. Remember when? In conclusion, I'm keeping this episode short, although I have to say, I mean, this is a memory, and the photos are tucked away somewhere, which I'll talk about in a moment. It was a fun trip, but I would say it was not particularly story-worthy, other than the fact that it happened, and we did see a lot of New York City in the space of days, again, not decades. But as far as like amazing occurrences and whatnot, we were pretty much tourists. We were doing our thing. I think if we were wandering around the city and encountering characters and unusual things that had gone on and whatnot, it would be a more interesting story. But I will say New York is there for us. It is not possible to talk about a visit to New York in any great detail in an audio-only presentation, of course. So this is really just a smattering of recollection from a time when we were not all carrying GPS-enabled cameras that could record our every movement onto a map with check-ins and streaming commentary and whatnot. I have the pictures I took somewhere in a box, and I recall back on 9/11, the actual 9/11, chatting with TM. We had each pulled out our respective photo albums and had a look at the time. It was only about 6 years prior. New York is quite a place. But to be honest, the world is full of such places, all different but sort of similar. Most, if not all, worth visiting. The few other places I have visited, the world is very big. I really like Dublin, which is kind of a working city feel to it. Like everybody's on their way somewhere, or people are hanging out in pubs, but it doesn't feel like you have to buy a ticket to get into an escalator to go to the top floor of wherever you're visiting, right? As opposed to Rome, which has an awful lot of tourist traps to go along with all those ancient structures. There are people dressed as centurions and whatnot for photo opportunities. I mean, it's very different. I didn't see one person dressed as a leprechaun when I was in Dublin, and it's a better place for it. I'm on the fence about planning, have a list of sites to see, maybe even go with a group and plan everything ahead of time, or wander around the place, maybe meet some locals, take their suggestions, see what comes of it. I've gone with the latter several times, especially when I was traveling for work, since I was never really sure what my plans would be. So it was really more of a, hey, what's good to check out? I got a few hours today. You can meet people in pubs in Dublin at the drop of a hat. So that's pretty easy to do. And you'll get an honest opinion. You'll get somebody who's been there and done that probably more than once. And while I surely missed out on seeing something that has 1 million pictures and videos associated with it online somewhere, seeing a place as the locals do might be a worthwhile thing as well. Do both in random order and see what happens, perhaps. So there you go. I would like to go back to New York just for the sake of going back and not having to go there for work. Go check some stuff out, especially if they're going socialist. Affordable living in New York City? No, that's clearly deport that guy. So, no, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of New York in the coming years. We'll see what happens. I would like to go sooner rather than later, but that's true of most places. Although I will say Las Vegas, so to kind of end on a compare and contrast note, Las Vegas has nowhere near the cultural depth, the history, history from this point of view of the country, and of course just the culture that has developed there, the immigrant cultures that have blended together, and all of it. So New York is certainly a storied place. Las Vegas has probably almost as much going on, as in obviously things to see, things to eat, things to drink, places to do these things. There's something always being built or torn down, not always. We are now gathering our professional sports catalog, so or portfolio perhaps. We have a baseball stadium that may never get built and a baseball team that may never actually be playing in Las Vegas, but we have football, we have hockey, we have some basketball possibilities. We have a local team. I think it's the Aces They're not quite the Athletics, but that's probably a good thing. We have Formula One racing that shuts down the whole city sometimes. We have any number of residences of entertainers. We have the Sphere, which was it may still be owned by Madison Square Gardens Corporation or whatever it is, MSG. So there's a ton of stuff to do here, and people will always talk about the tourism component. They're always speaking to tourists when they're posting photos and videos endlessly about the latest restaurants or the cool pool places, the top 10 bars, the top 5 restaurants, the top this, that, the other. They're usually talking to visitors. They're not talking to locals, although some people do cater to locals more. Hey, if you live here, check out these 25 places that are not on the Strip. But the interesting thing, I think, is just how there's always new stuff. I mean, they're trying to keep it fresh for tourists, right? I think New York is kind of New York. There's really, it is what it is, unapologetically, and it will curse at you if you ask questions. Vegas there's always some new thing. There's always a new place opening or closing. They're not necessarily tearing down buildings as much, but clearly the number of high rises here is zero compared to the Manhattan area, especially. But yeah, I think I wouldn't put Vegas as like a classic cultural stop, but it's an interesting place just because there is so much going on at all times, and it's nearly impossible to figure out the what's and the where's. And you can plan, but I mean, you can also just wander around and see what you encounter. I think New York has much more of a cultural component, so wandering around is interesting, but having some sort of plan, as we did, is also interesting. So do it in 2 trips. I think in Vegas, you're basically, you unless you've been here a bunch of times, you're going to book a place somewhere to sleep. And if you do it right, you're not going to spend too much time in that place. And you might see some sights if you're here for a trade show or convention, if you're here for somebody's bachelor party or a wedding or something, or if you're here for a sporting event, or if you're here for entertainment. Maybe you're just here to game, cards, dice, whatever you're into. So there's a whole bunch of things going on here, but it is very sort of, it's not as deep. I'll put it that way. So there's tons of stuff to see, tons of stuff to do here, but it doesn't have quite the legacy behind it, I think. So interesting. But Dublin, I think also, like I said, is a lot more, the New York parts of Dublin, if I can make that connection, are that people actually live and work there. New York is not built to be a tourist destination. It certainly has tourist destinations in it. Las Vegas is a tourist destination. Like, it prides itself on being a destination city with a top 5 brand and all this. Rome, as I said, I think is closer to Vegas than it would like to admit. There are a couple of places like that are really built for people to come and visit. So it's kind of interesting. I would like very much to get out and about and see more of this and that. Go back to New York clearly because it's worth visiting more than a few times. But similar trips to other places, hopefully in the offing. That's where I'm going to leave it for today. I kept it reasonably short. I think if I had gone into any great detail, had I remembered great detail, I have memories of the, but like I said, we did not have like outlandish experiences. And the Rodney Dangerfield taxi driver was probably one of the highlights to give it some context. So good times. It was a good tourist trip. I have far more interesting stories from Dublin than New York, to be honest. But maybe that'll change. And that's where we're going to leave it for today. Thank you for listening as always. We will catch you on the next, during, or maybe in the next episode. Take care.